Okay, settle in. Let me tell you a story. It's a story about something precious, something vital, that's slipping through our fingers, almost without us noticing. And it starts in a place you might least expect. Ever feel like the world's spinning faster? That there's just less quiet? Less space to simply think? Well, you're not alone. And what I'm about to share might just explain a piece of that feeling. Picture this. Universities, ivory towers, bastions of knowledge, all across the country, even the most elite ones, places like Columbia. Professors there are sounding an alarm, a quiet one at first, but it's growing louder. They're students. They can't read books. Now, I know what you're thinking. Can't read? These are college students. And yes, they can decipher words, but an entire book in a week? That's the expectation in some courses. Yet, increasingly, students are confessing, "Professor, I can't do it." One student, imagine her, bright, ambitious, admitted to a top-tier university, told her professor she'd never been required to read an entire book before. Not one. And this isn't just a campus phenomenon. It's everywhere. People in general are reading less. Men, women, college-educated, not college-educated, it doesn't matter. The pages are gathering dust. So, the question is, why? What's happened? This isn't a simple single thread, my friends. It's a tapestry, woven from many strands. And the first thread? It takes us back to the very beginning, to how we teach our children to open the door to the written word. For a long, long time, we had a method, solid, dependable. We called it phonics. Remember that? You start small, individual sounds. C-A-T. You build them up. More complex sounds. Then words. If you hit a word you don't know, sound it out. Simple, direct. But then, around the swinging 60s, a new idea bloomed. It was called whole language learning. Later, similar ideas like balanced literacy came along. The core thought? Learn at the word level. Use something called 3Qing. Basically, kids were taught to guess words from context, from pictures, from the shape of the sentence. It was pitched as natural, organic even. This romantic notion that children have an innate ability to read. Just put them in a rich environment, give them a few nudges, and voila. They'd teach themselves. No more boring phonics drills. Reading as an art, not a science. Lovely, isn't it? There was just one tiny problem. A colossal one, actually. It didn't work. Literacy rates began to fall. In countries that embraced whole language, parts of the US, Canada, the UK, New Zealand, Australia, more and more kids couldn't read at their grade level. It was a systemic failure, a quiet crisis unfolding in classrooms. Think about it. If you were never truly taught the mechanics of reading, if decoding a sentence feels like wrestling a bear, is that something you'll do for fun? For pleasure? No. It's going to feel like hard, frustrating work. So naturally, people just stopped. Now, these ideas, whole language and balanced literacy, they weren't unopposed. Oh no. There was pushback, fierce debate. They called it the reading wars. In some places, it was described as the most vicious fight in politics. Imagine that, a war over how to teach reading. Journalists, scientists, they kept pointing out the damage. And then, something unexpected happened. COVID-19. Suddenly, millions of kids were learning at home. And parents, they got a front row seat. They saw with their own eyes how ineffective some of these methods were. That frustration? It lit a fire. More states, even whole countries, are now bringing phonics back, re-emphasizing those foundational building blocks. The data, you see, is pretty clear. Phonics helps. So maybe, just maybe, we'll see a tide turn. More people finding joy in reading again. But for the students who went through that system, for many the damage is done. And how to fix that? Well, that's a heavy question. Now, here's where it gets even more complex. Those students at Columbia, the ones who feel they can't read a book a week, I'd wager most of them can read at grade level. They got into elite schools after all. So the whole language debacle? That's part of the story, but not the whole story for them. Their struggle points to something else, something that happened in schools even after phonics might have been present. Think about education reforms, names like No Child Left Behind, Common Core. You've heard them, right? These reforms, especially in the US, pushed two big things: informational texts and standardized testing. Students were taught to engage with text by extracting information. What's the main argument? Find the evidence. What's the thesis statement? You'd even hear folks saying books were outdated, that we needed to teach kids the texts they'd really encounter, articles, web pages. So, English class, traditionally where you dive deep into novels, became about dissecting excerpts, analyzing an argument in a 5-paragraph snippet. What got lost? Things like exploring symbolism, unpacking themes, the patient art of close reading, that immersive journey through a long, challenging book. That traditional work, it builds something crucial: reading stamina. When a student, fully capable of decoding words, says they can't read a whole book in a week, it's often because their reading stamina hasn't been built. Teachers, even in middle and high schools, they've seen this stamina declining year after year. How do you build it? Well, one of the best ways is to read books. Just sit. See how many pages you can journey through before something pulls you away. But students aren't getting that chance in the classroom. One survey, only 17% of educators said they primarily teach with whole texts. 17%. So, for those bright students at top universities, I think this is a bigger piece of their puzzle than the early reading instruction. They weren't taught how to be great readers. They were taught how to be great test takers. Their education was optimized for standardized tests, the SAT, the ACT. For those, you read excerpts, you answer multiple choice, maybe write a short essay. You don't need to wrestle with Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, or Dickens. You don't need to get lost in their worlds for hours. So when they hit a freshman class, a great novels seminar, and they're handed the Iliad, it's like being asked to run a marathon when you've only ever sprinted for the bus. It's hard, it's unfamiliar. So we have two big streams feeding this river of non-reading. Some were never taught to read properly. Others were never taught how to read books, how to build that deep engagement. But there's one more giant in the room, isn't there? One more reason why, even if we can read, and even if we once loved it, we find ourselves not doing it. You know what I'm talking about. These things, our phones. It's often overlooked, but many of us do spend our days reading, constantly, scrolling through an endless river of text on social media. More text, sometimes, than people in history saw in a month. Even on video-heavy platforms, there are captions, comments, descriptions. We're always reading something. The world, it seems, wants you to read. It just doesn't want to give you the quiet, the focus, the time it takes to sink into a good book. I have this lovely spot in my backyard. Peaceful, quiet. I bring a book out here sometimes, intending to get lost in its pages. I start reading. Feels good. And then, this little rectangle demands my attention. If I want to actually read, I have to make a conscious choice. The phone stays inside, far away. Now imagine you're that college student. You've never really read a long, hard book. Your professor says, read Homer's Iliad in a week. You're a good sport. You go to your dorm. You open the book. I'm going to do this. But then think of the siren calls. Your phone, your laptop, other people. Anything with a screen, really, promising instant stimulation. Because let's be honest, even for those of us who love reading, the act itself, it's quiet, it's slow. It's the antithesis of our hyper-stimulated world. Many schools are finally starting to ban smartphones from classrooms. And my reaction? What took you so long? Of course, students can't learn, can't focus, can't read deeply if they're constantly pulled away. So not only have we sometimes failed to teach reading effectively, we've also designed a world that actively conspires against the deep, reflective, focused practice of reading good books. When adults explain why they don't read anymore, they usually give 3 reasons. No time, can't pay attention long enough, or they blame social media. I suspect these are all tangled together. The lack of time, the shattered focus, they're often because of social media and other easy entertainment. I often try to read before bed. Sometimes I tell myself, just a quick check of the phone first. An hour later, I look up, dazed. Time flows differently on these devices, doesn't it? It's easier, more instantly gratifying, even if afterwards I feel hollow. So the result of all this? Fewer and fewer people are reading books. Yes, you have your super readers, bless them, who devour books and keep the averages from looking even worse. But there's a growing ocean of people for whom reading books just isn't their thing anymore. Where does that leave us? It leaves us with a challenge. A quiet crisis that affects not just our students, but the very way we think, we focus, and we connect with the deep, timeless wisdom held within the pages of books. What do you think? Have you felt this pull away from books? What are your biggest reading challenges? Or maybe you found ways to fight back, to carve out that precious time. I'd love to hear your stories, your thoughts, down in the comments. This is a conversation worth having, so if this resonated with you, if it made you think, please give this video a like, subscribe for more explorations into the world around us and the stories that shape us, and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Let's keep the conversation and hopefully the pages turning.